Martha De La Torre had to sell her house and move back to live with her parents to finance her dream project, but also to be able to pay back a big debt to friends and family. She survived on a $10 an hour job for years, and now she commands a company that generates revenues of $25 million a year.
On a weekly basis, so we actually were running on the little capital that I put in, which was not a lot at the time. It was sweat equity and $20,000. We launched El Clasificado. We eventually raised about $350,000, but it wasn't enough. So we struggled for so many years, and it took us about 10 years to get the business model right, and then it started taking off.
El Clasificado has an impressive print distribution of more than 500,000 weekly copies, as well as its high-performing website, elclasificado.com, with its 25 million monthly page views and nearly 1 million unique visitors. Let's meet Martha De La Torre and be inspired by one of the most important and influential Hispanic Latina entrepreneurs in America and find out ComoLoHizo.
Éxito.
Success.
Hábitos.
Habits.
¿Cómo lo hizo?
How do they make it?
Descubra las costumbres y secretos de los triunfadores.
Discover the habits and the secrets of those who have succeeded.
Martha, thanks so much for being with us in ComoLoHizo.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate it very much. You are very famous, very successful, and I do appreciate with someone like you, breaks a little bit of their schedule to find time to talk to us. It's amazing, awesome. I do appreciate it. So let's start. Where did you born?
I was born in Los Angeles. My parents actually came from Ecuador in the 1950s. My brother was born in Ecuador, and I was born about within a year after my parents were here. And they came, like so many immigrants, for a better life, a better education. And that was the directive from my father. You're going to go to college, figure it out. And I did. And I actually graduated as a CPA, not an entrepreneur.
When did you find out that you actually were an entrepreneur and not a CPA?
Oh, that's funny because my nickname is the Reluctant Entrepreneur. I actually wanted to be a fine arts major. I used to do dance. I went to UCLA, and I didn't like modern dance, so I became an accountant so I could get a job. Went to Loyola and was able to get a job as a CPA, and I was one of the few people who spoke Spanish at that time, so I would get any client who had anything to do with Latino market, and one of them was La Opinión. So I used to be their CPA consultant, I think in my second year at Ernst & Young, and I continued being involved with them for several years. In about 7.5 years, I was a manager at Ernst & Young. I had met my future husband, and I had decided it was time to leave. And La Opinión asked me if I'd be their controller, and I said, no, but I'll be your CFO. And I just saw the emergence of the Hispanic market. This was in 1985. I saw it growing, and there was an opportunity there, and I thought, I think I can help them. And they were struggling at the time. I thought I can either learn a lot and help them, or it doesn't work out and maybe I go off to the next chapter in my life. But experience is great. So I joined them in 1985, and I was there for a little over 2 years. And I saw the opportunity for so many products that La Opinión didn't have. And I learned about classifieds. And I was shocked at the millions you could make just from classified ads. And there was no free classified paper in the Spanish market. So I used to say someone should do a penny saver in Spanish. And one of my skills at Ernst & Young was doing business plans for clients. So I drafted a business plan because I used to talk about it. And my business friend said, you should write it. I said, I'll write it. I'm not going to do it, but I'll write it. And I wrote it, and it was fun, and it was creative. And then I decided to do it with partners. I was going to be the sweat equity investor, and these partners that were big attorneys in town were going to give me probably $300,000 to $500,000. I calculated we needed about $600,000. And they said, no, we're more experienced than you are. Just launch it and we'll get there. Don't worry. So we launched it. Their check bounced. And I ended up being the sweat equity and the pain entrepreneur. So I dragged Joe in as the angel investor. Joe's my husband. And through friends and family who originally we said, we don't want to, we want to invest. And I said, no, I'm sorry. I already have an investor. Then all of a sudden we went back and said, do you still want to invest? And from 1,000 to 5,000, we raised about 350,000 from friends and family. And on a weekly basis, so we actually were running on the little capital that I put in, which was not a lot at the time. It was sweat equity and $20,000. We launched El Clasificado. We eventually raised about 350,000, but it wasn't enough. So we struggled for so many years, and it took us about 10 years to get the business model right, and then it started taking off.
That's so interesting, but I have some questions in between. So I read in some place, I think it was Forbes magazine that interviewed you before, that you had to sell your house?
Yes.
In order to bankroll your project?
Yes. I had to sell something every week to keep bankrolling it.
So that's a passion that is very rare or strange to find. So what was your drive? Why you went all the way? Why you just said, okay, you know what, enough is enough, maybe later?
Well, my husband would have wished I had done that. But as I said earlier, most of the people who gave us the money were friends and family. I couldn't bankrupt it. I couldn't walk away from our debts. I couldn't face them for the rest of my life. And I was getting job offers, but I thought, great, I get money, but I can't look at them in the face. So that's not the kind of person I am. And so I moved in with my father. I tried to live on like $10 a week and just keep the company going. And my husband, Joe, had 2 other jobs to keep us going. I sold my car, and then I had to sell the house. And we were able to keep it going for 10 years, borrowing from our parents constantly. But eventually it did turn around, and even investors who had given us a little money, they said, I already wrote that off 10 years ago. We were very happy the day that we were able to return their investment. And some of them didn't want to accept it, so they stayed on with us later, and then we gave them dividends. So all our investors were very happy, but we bought most of them out. So we own about 70% of the company now.
So, but it's so interesting because within all this turmoil in your life, with debts and family and friends, looking at you and said, hey, what's going on? You sold the house afterwards. So before was the getting the money from your friends and family, and then, because what you told me, you had to sell your house in order to keep rolling, correct?
I had to sell it to put more money in the company. I also had to sell it because I wasn't taking a salary, so I couldn't pay my mortgage anymore. So I moved in with my dad for about 7 weeks, and I stayed 7 years.
So how do you know that you were, that's funny, how do you know that you were going to be successful then?
I didn't. By that point in time, I thought this was what I got into for the rest of my life. It's going to take the rest of my life to get rid of the debt, and I just accepted it. I wasn't happy. I was sad and just tried to make the best of my life. Now, at the same time, my first nieces and nephews started getting born from, I don't have children of my own, and they gave me a new motivation. I thought for them, I really have got to find solutions. So it re-energized me. It still took a few years. I was actually doing consulting on the side, and that helped recapitalize the company. So I was using my CPA skills to make money on the side, pay off all the debt, and not only did it pay off the debt and get rid of that monkey on my back, it gave me the time, by not having to field creditors and just think of surviving, to actually think, how can we grow? And at the same time, my husband started saying, this has viability. We started seeing it take off. We started hiring different kind of people. We started hiring younger people who, this is 1995-ish. Our employees did not know how to use a computer, and some of them didn't want to learn a desktop. So I started getting kids from Garfield High School, and I could afford to hire them, and they didn't have problems. They were there at 3 o'clock. I knew exactly how many hours they could work. They didn't have the same problems other people have. My car broke down. I have babysitter problems, which when you only have 6 employees, 1 or 2 are gone, and that's it. So that re-energize us with these young people, and we actually built the company off a lot of students that we hired from Garfield High that went to college, and then we started hiring from Lincoln High, and kids who knew the community, spoke Spanish really well, but also spoke English, so they knew both cultures, because sometimes you're limited when your employees only know one side of the culture, because we are in an interesting culture. We are the Hispanic market in the United States, where most people operate in English, but in our communities, they operate in Spanish all day long. So it's unique. Even as we became an online marketplace, Google learned from us how to communicate to U.S. Hispanics speaking Spanish through Google in the U.S.
So you had a mentor?
I've had many mentors. When I was at Ernst & Young, there were a lot of partners that I learned from while I was there, and the business skills I learned from there, plus professors from Loyola. I think what both Ernst & Young and Loyola brought to me was a lot of really solid core values. Another reason why I couldn't give up. I didn't feel it was ethical for me to go do better, and then they had given up. So that kept me going, and we were always trying to do the right thing, not just by our investors, but of course our community and our advertisers. Always working, how can we make the product better? And what we were able to do at the time, it was simple, really good distribution. Both Joe and I are CPAs, so we used to audit our distribution. We made it so good that we got so many awards over the years on the best distribution because we wanted to make sure someone was picking it up. We didn't just put the magazine out and hope that it gets picked up and take away the returns and keep charging the advertisers. We would measure every week how many magazines were there and make sure that we had enough so we wouldn't run out, but not so much that we waste. And at the end of the day, if people don't get the magazine when we start in print in your hand, an ad doesn't really exist. Now, of course, it's different with digital. It's all about search engine optimization and marketing and trying to get it to the right audience. And I think we've always been very customer-centric. And we have two customers. We have the audience, and our readers are customers, and we have the businesses. They are our customers. They're the ones who pay for the ad so we could give the magazine for free to the community. We also, unlike the Penny Saver, we would include about 5% editorial, and it wasn't news editorial. We tried to look for what kind of editorial would have helped my mother when she first came from Ecuador. That's what we would think. So we used to do how to learn English, like really basic terms, how to get your kid in college, how to improve your health. And that was different. We were trying to be like the Ladies' Home Journal for free in print and in Spanish where anybody can access it. And I think that really gained us a very devoted and loyal audience.
Very interesting. Now, I have some questions. From your perspective, what's more important, to be passionate, have passion about your concept, to be stubborn, and where and when is the moment to stop and pivot?
Well, pivot and be nimble are two of my favorite words. And I think I used to feel I wrote something in a business plan, I have to do it like that. That's what I told our investors. And what I had to learn was, no, you have to listen to your environment. Don't do what don't just follow what you said you would do. Do the right thing. So you have to be flexible, adjust your business plan, and you have to be nimble, and you have to pivot. I mean, sometimes I come into the office, this is our initiative, this is the initiative for the next 3 months, and then some news came out, we discovered something, tomorrow I change it. It doesn't mean I'm wishy-washy. It means that with real insights and information, you have to use that knowledge and pivot and understand when you have to pivot.
So how important for you is to learn, to read, to be prepared in your trade, in your industry? It's
very important. We are very strong on the online, and we couldn't afford to hire experts of how to get online, so I bought a book, Search Engine Optimization for Dummies, search engine 1 hour a day, and that is the way I tackled it. And that is how I train. Our employees are very good about doing self-learning, online learning, but we also, in the next few years, we're going to invest $200,000 just in training our employees, because it's always important. You always have to learn. Facebook didn't even exist 10 years ago, so now we have to learn Facebook. Now we have to learn Instagram. We have to learn analytics of each of those, and we just have to accept it, that we have to learn. And fortunately, younger people are more used to that. They're quick to go on YouTube, figure it out. And that is why I think we are ahead of so many of our competitors that maybe have gone out of business or are still just doing print. What we have to come up with What is the best product for our customers, our niche? And our niche are small businesses with less than employees. We have a lot of businesses with more than that, but our niche, we have thousands and thousands of customers. What do they need? What's accessible to them? What is going to help them so they don't get disrupted by what's going, their industry, so they don't go out of business? For instance, travel agencies used to be our number one category. No longer is, but a lot of those travel agents probably no longer exist. We have a lot of shops.